David, I want to jump right in. I'm going to play you some clips from the Trump remarks in front of all of the collected admirals, generals, etc. But before I get to that, I want to play you a clip from the Oval Office back and forth. This is prior to that, when Trump is asked, because you talk about his state of mind and his general, physical condition. You mention that from time to time. And this was a moment where it did seem as though he didn't understand a question that was so related to something he was going to be doing in like 12 hours later. It was a question about, what are you going to communicate to all these generals? And here's Tony. Tony will play it for you. Go ahead.
Secretary Hegseth is inviting military leaders from all around the country on Tuesday. Will you also be there?
From all around the country to what?
To
Virginia. He's
inviting
the generals and admirals to Virginia for a big meeting.
Well, I know. I love it. I mean, I think it's great. Let him be friendly. Let him be friendly with the generals and admirals from all over the world. Why? Is there something? No, but is there something wrong with it?
What is it about? Will you be there personally as well? And what is it about?
Well, I'll be there if they want me, but why is that such a big deal? I mean, the fact that we're getting along with the generals and admirals from all. Remember, I'm the president of peace. It's good to get along. It's good. You act like this is a bad thing. Isn't it nice that people are coming from all over the world to be with us?
It's not particularly unusual that generals who report to the Secretary of War and then to the President of the United States are coming to speak with the Secretary of War.
J.D. Vance.
It's actually not unusual at all, and I think it's odd that you guys have made it into such a big story.
Is it a big story?
I don't think it is, sir.
I would think it's no, but isn't it a good story? I mean, we're respected from all over the world as a military force. I rebuilt the military during my first term, even though we gave a chunk of it away to Afghanistan. But we're talking Afghanistan too, by the way, about Bagram and about that. But that's a very small amount compared to what we rebuilt it by. But I rebuilt the military, and we're very respected. We have the strongest military anywhere in the world without question. We have the greatest equipment in the world. We're selling the equipment to other countries. And a lot of generals want to be here, and they want to look at they're also going to be touring equipment sites. They're going to be talking about the newest weapons, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's great when generals and top people want to come to the United States to be with our now called Secretary of War. Does everybody like the name? I do. Yeah.
So, go ahead, David. It did seem like you just checked out on the reality of what was going on.
If there's any video that shows that Donald Trump is in serious cognitive decline, it's this one. Pete Hegseth ordered a whole lot of generals and admirals from all over the world to come to Washington. We don't know exactly what's going on, but the question was quite clear, and there were follow-ups to the question, and J.D. Vance inserted himself very smoothly, I thought, to make it clear that these were American military officers. And Trump keeps talking as if we have summoned generals and admirals from other countries. And it's been clear for a long time now that Donald has serious cognitive issues, something he kept accusing Joe Biden of. The books have now come out about people who work with Biden. And we know that, in fact, all of them have said basically they think he was solid in his judgments. None of them were worried about his judgments. And we now know also that he took an Ambien of all things before the famous debate where he was like a deer in the headlights. Why he would take an Ambien rather than a nap before the debate is difficult to fathom. But there was no indication of the kind of issue here where he couldn't understand complex issues. Trump clearly doesn't understand, and he drops back to talk about this nonsense idea that we're going to get back Bagram Air Base in near Kabul. The Taliban has already told us to go pound sand. It's just, I think we need to recognize that there's a serious problem here. It's going to get more serious. This kind of condition doesn't get better. There's good reason to think Trump is diabetic. And he also, over the weekend, talked about how all of the kinds of maladies that bother people who are Donald's age and mine, he's 2.5 years older than me, can be taken care of with cannabis, raising the rather obvious question of, well, Mr. President, are you eating gummies or smoking dope? It was just ridiculous. And he also put up, and I guess he's taken back down, this ridiculous far out conspiracy thing about something called a metabed that will magically allow you to like regrow limbs and as if we were lizards.
Yeah, that came out of one of those conspiracy theory type QAnon adjacent kind of websites. So let's cut to today when Donald Trump spoke before the group. The assembled group that we were saying last hour could have been assembled through a Zoom call. It was it's an immense effort, both expensive, incredibly inconvenient from a security standpoint, stupid to put all of these high-ranking generals, admirals, et cetera, and their assistants in one place there at Quantico. I mean, admittedly, a well-defended place, but nonetheless, just
you never want to put a lot of your senior people in one place, as the Ukrainians have shown by repeatedly killing high-level Russian officers who were all in the same tent or the same building together.
So that said, Tony, play me a little bit of the president, if you would, before the group today.
His headlines. It was during Biden's 4 years. The auto pen. I call him the auto pen. It's, how would you like to have your thing signed by an auto pen? You know, when I have a general and I have to sign for a general because we have beautiful paper, the gorgeous paper, I said throw a little more gold on it. They deserve it. I want the A paper, not the D paper. We used to sign a piece of garbage. I said, this man's going to be a general, right? Yeah. I don't want to use this. I want to use the big, beautiful, firm paper. I want to use the real gold writing when you talk about the position, and they're beautiful.
A man deal.
That gives you a little of kind of what you're talking about. It's the kind of riffing he does into an absurdity and triviality that one wouldn't associate with a meeting of this kind.
Right. We pull these general officers from all over the planet in all the branches of the service to come to Virginia. Enormous expense, okay, you want to bring them, bring them. But to talk about the paper on which their commissions are signed, Trump does not know what he's doing. And I've been saying this for years. He has no idea. He plays at being president. Look at this past weekend. We're facing a government shutdown at midnight tonight because unless they bolt, the Democrats have drawn a line. We will not go any further with taking health care away from the poorest people in America. And is Trump working on that issue over the weekend? Is he trying to get Democrats to break with the party by calling them on the phone? No, he's playing golf. And there's a video of him that suggests he may have fallen asleep while he was playing golf, which goes to my idea that I wonder if he's severely diabetic. I mean, he's very overweight. He does not exercise, and he eats a terrible diet of the kind known to be associated with being diabetic. So this is just further evidence of his deterioration. And to think that J.D. Vance, who in subtle ways has gone out of his way to undercut Trump here and there, isn't thinking about becoming president through the cabinet voting to remove Trump would be foolish. Certainly, at a minimum, Vance's supporters.
Trump's still a significant figure. I don't know if they want to get rid of him right away. He's a good hood ornament, even though he may just be, cognitively out of it.
Yeah, I'm sorry you lost me for a minute. We're having internet troubles here. I'm talking to you on cellular. We've had presidents who couldn't function in the past. We know that Abraham Lincoln suffered from depression, and there were periods when he wasn't very active. And of course, famously, Woodrow Wilson had a stroke, and Mrs. Wilson was effectively the president of the United States for a period of time. We live in a different age. We live in an age of hypersonic weapons, nuclear weapons, other kinds of threats. But I don't expect any quick move by the Republican leadership to remove Trump. And they'll do so only after something very significant has gone wrong, something that even Trump's people have to recognize as a problem. And that's not going to be a crazy rant, an inability to understand a question, idiotic remarks of the kind you'd expect from a seventh grader. It's going to be something serious. That should also worry us as a people. I mean, let's remember, Pete Hegseth said, we will stop trying to prevent the Russians from breaking into Pentagon computer systems. We have done a number of other actions that are putting our national security at risk. And I think that non-state actors, as well as states critical of us, aren't looking at this and thinking, I wonder if there's an opportunity to do something here. That's also would be foolish. Of course they are. Whether they will succeed or not is a whole different question. But this is not a safe time for our country, and it's because Donald Trump, A, doesn't know what he's doing, B, is obviously not well mentally.
Well,
And
the Chinese, I would think, just sit back and watch the implosion of America right now. Something else from the speech, just on that point. Tony, can you cue up again for David K. Johnston the piece about going into America's cities with troops and how essentially America's cities would be a training ground for many of these military troops? I thought that was an inflection moment in a meandering speech that was on and off prompter that got into the ridiculousness of kind of the basic MAGA campaign speech, dumping on Joe Biden, et cetera. He got to this, which I felt was substantive and speaks to his disposition toward the military and the American people. Go ahead.
Nobody's been hurt. Washington, D.C. went from our most unsafe city to just about our safest city in a period of a month. We had it under control in 12 days, but give us another 15, 16 days, it's perfect. And people other than politicians that look bad, they think, the Democrats run most of the cities that are in bad shape. We have many cities in great shape too, by the way, I want you to know that. But it seems that the ones that are run by the radical left Democrats, what they've done to San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, they're very unsafe places, and we're going to straighten them out one by one. And this is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. That's a war, too. It's a war from within. Controlling the physical territory of our border is essential to national security. We can't let these people in. We had no people enter in the last 4 months. Zero. Even I can't believe that. We had millions coming in, pouring in. 25 million all told, and of those 25 million, many of them should never be in our country. They would take their worst people and their people from prisons and jail, and they'd put them in a caravan and they'd walk up. CNN was interviewing one person. Oh, why are you coming? I want freedom. Good. Were you in jail? Yes. For what? Murder. He said, you had to see this anchor, a young woman. She's like, I couldn't believe. She'll probably lose her job, but because the left doesn't want to hear that. But we're running it based on common sense and based on love of our country. But I want to salute every service.
Okay, so you get a kind of a sense where his head is. I mean, he's again, he's trying to both play the hits and also he tips where he's headed.
Well, and just making stuff up. I mean, the fact is that crime has been in serious decline in this country for decades. In LA right now, the number of murders with 4 million residents, 3.8 million residents, is less than a third of what it was when I was covering the LAPD 45 years ago.
Yeah, violent crime is down everywhere, yes.
Yes. And, he made some remarks over the weekend about Portland burning. The last time we had any issue where you could make such a claim was right after the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis. And it was a very narrow, small, confined area. This idea that, the cities are completely unsafe. DC has a much lower crime rate than a number of other cities. Memphis, for example, Jackson, Mississippi,
yeah.
I think 4 times the violent crime rate of Washington, D.C. or New York. He just makes this stuff up. He doesn't know anything. Now, all presidents live in kind of a bubble. One of the reasons it was important when we had previous presidents that all the major newspapers were delivered to the White House is they would typically, at least take a look at the front page of all of them to have an independent sense of what people outside the White House were telling them. There's no way we're ever going to overcome a president living in something of a bubble, but Trump's mind is so jumbled. He cannot analyze and process subtle facts and some of them not so subtle. Like, yeah, 5 years ago, there was a building burning in Portland.
Well, the music stopped for him clearly during the George Floyd thing. That's where his mind is,
Yes.
and so he sort of has that picture in his mind. Yeah, but I thought the instructive notion was to all of you, generals and admirals, look at the enemy within. Look at the problems for us that are right here in America with the left, with the liberals, with those cities that are on fire, that are ruled by liberals, where there's a chaos and a horror show that needs our discipline, in effect. I mean, that was all implied, but some of it was out and out stated.
Well, and this is one of the reasons I've said for many years, at least since 2011, that Donald sees himself as a dictator. Because Donald doesn't believe in process of law. He doesn't understand what it is. Remember in 1989, he took out those 5 full-page ads saying that the 5 young men arrested in the Central Park wilding case should be summarily executed without even a trial. And after it was shown that they were innocent, the actual perpetrator was caught. They had evidence, DNA and otherwise, proving he was the actual perpetrator. What did Trump basically do? He doubled down and said they should be executed anyway. He has no understanding of this. Now, what I was worried about with this meeting with the generals and admirals is either there'd be a whole bunch of firings, and that still could happen, we don't know, or they were going to issue some order which officers would probably find they could not follow, maybe in an effort to get them to resign. Because remember, officers only take an oath to the Constitution. Grunts, sailors, airmen, they take an oath to follow the orders of the president and defend the Constitution. And Trump is constantly pushing this theme that Democrats are radical lunatics. In fact, the lowest crime cities in this country tend to be democratically led cities. And that's not because they have Democratic mayors. It's because the cities that are blue, which is most of the cities, and the states that are blue, tend to have better economies. They tend to have higher employment. And when you have reasonably stable employment and reasonably decent wages, you get a lot less pathological behaviors of the kind that, if you get in a car right now in LA and drive to see me and stop along the way, you cross the middle of the country, you'll find small towns. If you pull in and say, I'm going to stay at this little motel tonight, where, the principal activity you will observe is people tweaking on meth or other drugs, and because there's nothing there for them. We've hollowed out our economy, for which both parties are responsible.
Sure.
Without question, the Republicans started this with giving China most favored nation status in trading, but the Democrats went right along with all of this. They didn't stand up and draw a line in the sand like it appears as of right now they're doing today. But of course, there's got another, 11 hours, well, from where I am in the East Coast, 8.5 hours until the new year. And by the way, something very important happens tomorrow,
you're saying until the government shutdown is possible.
Yes, but
Right.
also the new fiscal year. The government's budget year is October 1 to September 30th. So tomorrow, ICE is suddenly flush with enormous amounts of money. And so some of these military bases I've mentioned to you, where they had sent orders, you have to get ready for ICE to come, and they haven't appeared. And I've wondered, well, why? Maybe Trump backed off or something? No, it's because tomorrow's when the money arrives.
What happens, David, if the government shuts down? What happens to that money?
Well, the government can't spend any money for things that are not considered essential. So the military keeps spending. ICE.
So that the ICE money would continue to flow then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's not going to flow are money for things like research contracts and things like that. And an essential element of this administration, which will make us poor, is to pull money out from higher education, to kill research grants, to stop putting money into we're on the verge of coming up with a vaccine for certain kinds of cancer, and they just killed it. Now, hopefully, private money will come in to protect this. But the things that they're doing are so destructive to our economy and our well-being. We live, like it or not, in a society that is highly technological, and it's going to be much more so going forward. And so, if you're President Xi, For example, you're looking at the U.S. and going, this is really great. China is going to be the country of the 21st century. And by God, thank you, Donald Trump. It is so wonderful that Donald Trump is president of the United States. It's China's biggest benefactor.
Yeah, this is what I was saying before. There, you can sit back and just watch America implode. The battle for the Chinese is not so much a battle fought with the armaments to which Hegseth and Trump were talking today. It was for them, and continues to be, an economic battle, and it's a way of building a society that's dominant, and they've really done it. I mean, the Belt and Road initiatives through the continent of Africa, and as you say, the leadership they're taking, and even in sustainable green energy, they're now going to be leaps and bounds ahead of where America is, since we're dismantling all of that. I want to go back though, because you said, have repeatedly made the point that control of the military is a big deal, and if a despotic leadership is ascendant and on its way here or here now, getting that military loyalty is critical. So today's military thing, I thought might, as you sort of were saying, might involve a loyalty test, a new oath, some kind of new, but it didn't. But Hegseth actually said, we're getting rid of DEI. We're getting rid of those who were hired for DEI reasons. We're getting rid of this diversity being our strength thing. I played this in the last hour, this clip from Hegseth. And we're also getting rid of people who are somehow in support of that philosophy underpinning the armed forces. So if you, generals, admirals, etc., if you're part of those people who support that kind of DEI diversity plan, you're going to be out. Hegseth said that today in his remarks. To me, it was the beginning of what you hinted at the beginning of this conversation, which is the firings may be still to come.
Yeah, I think they didn't call these people there simply to give them a talk. There's some larger scheme at work here. We simply haven't seen it play out yet. But the classic move, of course, for a dictator to consolidate power is you replace generals and admirals who won't do whatever you demand, regardless of their oath and their duty, with junior officers you promote out of order. We have seen Trump promote a couple of people out of order, and that it is absolutely essential that we keep the military non-political. In 1960, the military officers in the United States were roughly half Democrats and half Republicans. It's now overwhelmingly Republican, especially in the Air Force. We have a very serious problem in the Air Force that's been documented going back roughly 25 years. But people who were getting ahead in the Air Force were connected with certain churches, and if you were a Jew, if you were a non-believer, your career was pretty stymied at the Air Force in many cases. Not all cases, but many, because it's a huge organization. And so this meeting isn't over. And if it turns out something horrendous happens, maybe you and I can be on later in the week to talk about what it is, but things will flow out of this. This is also, here's something to think about. In 1950, the United States was close to 90% white people. Now it's less than 60% white people. That scares people who are racist, like Pete Hegseth, like Donald Trump. And so they're acting like they are scared. But notice something. We are incredibly wealthier and far less violent today as a multicultural society than we were when we were 90% white. The brain power in this country is in very good part because of people who have emigrated here. There's an Indian diaspora, and the highest educated group in America by far by religion are Hindus. The second highest group are Ashkenazi Jews. And then there's a huge drop to, it's one of the mainline Protestant faiths. I think Lutherans or Episcopalians, Presbyterians, one of those three. And then, of course, you get down Baptists, and they're at the bottom of the barrel here. And we have for now roughly 40 years been dumbing down our education. We've been not being as demanding about the development of young minds. So you have all these people who don't make a good living because they don't have a good education. Nobody is going to pay them high wages because their brains haven't been developed to make them worth that. They're angry. I feel terrible for them. This is a horrible thing that we have done to people. And it's understandable that they would say, oh, you elites, you went to college. Well, why do you get treated special? Because you went to college, you developed your capacity to do whatever fields you work in, whether it's microelectronics, being a physician, or anything else. And we will have to down the road address this, or we cannot sustain being a democracy. That's going to be a very, very important issue in the future. That
it's in that way that I thought it's so shocking to, in one sense, shocking anyway, to hear Pete Hegseth say that the old adage that diversity is our strength as a fighting force, he said that's gone and that's wrong, and we all knew it to be wrong, and now we understand that unity is our strength. Well, the two aren't mutually exclusive. You can have diversity in a fighting force that's unified. It was absurd to me, but he sold it, and he walked around the stage like it was a TED Talk this morning as he, emphatically, passionately stated these things that were clearly absurd, but they're of a kind. And I think the culling of the armed forces, it brings me back to so many conversations you and I have had, because you talk about that control of the military, and I just think, wow, they're going to Laura Loomer the military. They're going to go through social media. They're going to go through any kind of intel they can on their own people. And if there's any kind of wavering, they'll get rid of those people and put in loyalists.
Right. And one of the things to think about here is, let me riff off Charlie Kirk for a moment. Charlie Kirk famously said, if you get on an airplane and the pilot is black, you need to be worried. Actually, no. If I get on a plane and the pilot is black, a woman, Latino, I look at them and go, well, they must be really good because they got past all of the white guys who don't want people who aren't white guys to be pilots. I mean, you don't get to become a pilot unless you pass rigorous qualifications for this. And that's been very true in our military. And, I don't want a military with a bunch of guys who are just sharpshooters who know how to fire a gun or properly calibrate their HIMARS artillery to hit someplace. You want general officers who are incredibly sophisticated people who, if we send you as part of the Africa Command, that you have a deep knowledge of the history of Africa. You know that the richest man in the history of the world was an African king whose fortune is bigger relative to the wealth of the world than anybody alive today. You know how colonialism affected the history of Africa, and you understand the reasons people do things that may seem bizarre to us only because they don't live in our culture. If all you have is a bunch of white guys who are smart with guns, what you end up with is you're eating a croissant. What's wrong with you? We eat toast. And that's not how you successfully run a military. It's not how you avoid war. And so this dumbing down of American culture has been terribly damaging to our standing in the world.
It's a kind of toxic masculinity that seems to have leached into all of these different places. And the last thing I'll say on that, then I want to.
We're having a hard time recruiting. We're having a very hard time, by the way, recruiting.
They were kind of peacocking about recruitment numbers, but as usual, I don't know. It's imaginary.
Because what they did is they've lowered the standards for you to come in. If you had gone down 25 years ago to a recruiting station, they would give you a test, and they don't use that test anymore. Too many people failed it.
This even
so
as
they've
he's
dumbed down the
demanding.
qualifications.
Yeah, you're in and out, David. So pardon me for talking over you, but when you start to fade, I kind of jump in. The deal with the requirements and standards was sort of underscored today the other way, which is we're not going to take any more fatties here. We're not going to, everybody's going to be in tip-top shape. We're going to look good. No more beards. No more. I mean, it was unreal. It was unreal for its superficiality, yet somehow trying to elevate that superficiality to some significance. But that's just the final thing I wanted to say to round off what we heard and saw today is they really talk a lot about hardware, And of course, they talk about money. I think that $1 trillion that they talk about in the military budget is embarrassing and awful. But of course, it's paraded like a good thing as support. But it's the misplacement of those dollars to me, and the fact that, as you said, the technology has now evolved to the point that you need technological advancements that have little to do with the battleships you have and more to do with the technology you have. These wars are being fought and won with drones and with technology that's much more sophisticated than any kind of real power you're going to have from some of that other hardware.
Well, you know, we're still building $13 billion a ship aircraft carriers, and you can take them out now with a hypersonic weapon that you will hardly know is coming and can't do anything about. The nature of warfare has changed fundamentally, and we've seen that as the Ukrainians have held off the Russians. Our goal ought to be to get beyond war. Not that I have any expectation that'll happen in my lifetime or even my grandchildren's lifetimes. But that should be the goal we're working toward, is to not have all of this money being put into weaponry and threats. But unfortunately, the leadership we have right now are people who they don't know what they're doing. They're not smart enough to do the job. And unfortunately, millions of people believe they're the smartest people on the planet. They're really fantastic geniuses. And that's because they don't have the critical thinking skills, because we allowed our education system to continue to operate with declining standards of performance.
Yeah,
But,
and
hey,
so much of it
okay,
does seem
Paul.
theatrical and performative. I got to let you go to your, so I'll do the Daily Caller story without you, but love our time together. See you next week.
Take
The
care.
great David K. Johnston, everybody. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.